Muted.
Hello, everyone. This is Jennifer Kevlin. Dave Turbide is also on the line. Dave, are you still there?
I'm here.
Great. Just a bit of information before we get started. We are having issues with the GoToMeeting, so if you have any teammates that are trying to access this meeting, they will not be able to. I have just sent out a note to everyone letting them know of the log-on issues. We are recording the session tonight, and the information is also available off the APICS Northeast District website, and I sent that link in the email. So we will record tonight's session and have it available for everyone, and the information, again, is also on the Northeast District website. That being said, again, my name is Jennifer Kevlin, and I am pleased to have everyone here to start off the 2017 District Case Competition. This is the first night of our competition officially as we get started. What we're going to do tonight is review the rules, which everyone did get a copy of in the last week. We will look at the agenda just to make sure we recognize the different parts of the competition. And the primary purpose for tonight is to spend some time with Dave Turbide, who is our Fresh Connections facilitator. He will be taking us through some of the basics of the tool, and we will also be talking to him next week at our second webinar as he brings us through some of the round one results and gives us some of his insights on the activity he's seen so far in this first round. During all of this, I will also be monitoring the chat window, so as questions come up, we'll take those at the end. So if you have anything, please type it in the chat window, and we will address the questions. You will see lots of reminders as well in the next week for some key dates. The next key date is this Sunday, when round one will close, followed by our webinar number 2, which is next Tuesday night, which is the start off of the round 3. Moving on, we're just going to look at the rules briefly. These are the same rules that were emailed out to all the teams in the last week. Most important in the general information is that at this point, all team identification is to remain to your team number. Therefore, when we have the presentations or anything happening on site in Albany, we're asking teams to not disclose their school affiliation. Use of school insignia or school colors is prohibited. There are 2 deliverables for the competition. The first is the simulation round, which again kicks off tonight. We're going to be using the Fresh Connections tool, which everyone also in the last week got their log-on information to access the simulation tool. This first round has a 0% weight for all teams, as its purpose is to get people acquainted with the tool and using this simulation. Afterwards, the different rounds will have weights, and teams will be ranked by their ROA to determine if they were successful in working with this company who's facing supply chain issues. The simulation score will comprise of 50% of the total score for the competition. The second portion of the deliverables is the presentation. This presentation will be made on Saturday, March the 4th in Albany, New York. The presentations will be due at 10:30 in the morning, and then the actual presentations to the panel of judges start at 12:30. The presentations will run all afternoon, and then we will have an awards and reception ceremony that evening. For the presentation time limits, there will be set times and there will be a timer in the room that will make sure we adhere to these standards. Each team will have 8 minutes to make their presentation, and we'll have 5 minutes for judges' questions. We are asking teams to be in the presentation area before their presentation time, which will be assigned, so that we can get all the teams through in an appropriate amount of time and stay on our schedule. A reminder of these will be coming as we get closer to the on-site portion in Albany. Finally, that evening on Saturday, there will be recognition and awards for the top 3 teams in each flight, and that's the undergraduate and the graduate flight, and they will receive a monetary award. The top scoring team of the event will also be named the grand champion and represent the Northeast District at the 2017 APICS International Conference in San Antonio, Texas. And most importantly, although this is a competition, we want everyone to have fun, enjoy themselves, and really learn from the experience overall. The next slide shows some key dates, and this will be going out later on tonight as a reminder as well. We are at the top of the slide, which is tonight, which is our introductory webinar, and at the end of tonight, the round 1 will open up for our use to gain that experience with the simulation tool and make our decisions through Sunday at 9 a.m. On Sunday, the tool will close, and at that point, all of your round 1 decisions must be entered by 9 a.m. on Sunday. Next week, we'll have a webinar on Tuesday evening. We will hear from Dave Turbide again on the results of round 1 and some insights from his perspective. And then round 2 will open up after the webinar next week. All of the decisions for round 2 must be entered by Sunday, 2/26 at 9 a.m., in which time the simulation tool will close for round 2. We then will begin round 3 on Friday, March the 3rd, when we'll all be on site in Albany. Briefly looking at our schedule for Albany, on Friday, we're asking teams to show up between 1 and 3 o'clock for registration. At 3 o'clock, we will kick off the competition again, and we will complete round 3 to round 5 between 3 and 9 p.m. that evening. We will break for a dinner, and then again close by 9 o'clock. The next morning, there is breakfast, followed by that 10:30 deadline for your presentation. We will be having lunch, and directly after lunch, we will be starting the presentations for both the graduate and undergraduate tracks. We'll have our rewards and recognition program starting at 6 o'clock and then the entire day at 7. So again, we recognize there's a lot of information here. Hopefully you are getting what you need out of the emails that have been being sent to you with the schedule, and we'll keep this ahead of us so we all recognize where we are on our schedule and keep on track. The next portion of the evening we're going to spend talking about the Fresh Connections tool, which is again the simulation tool we'll be using for this year's competition. And it is about creating alignment in supply chain management. I'd like to introduce as well Dave Turbide. You have heard me mention him several times, and he will become one of your best friends in the next couple of weeks. He is our Fresh Connections facilitator with quite a history and background, as you can see by his biography. Dave has been doing this for us for the 2nd year now, and it's a really exciting tool that we have, and we are very happy that we're able to use Dave's knowledge and skills to help us as well. So Dave, thank you again for all of your work on the Northeast District competition. Now I'm actually going to hand the presentation over to Dave so he can show us the demonstration and the information so that we can get our hands on the tool. So let me pass this over to him.
Okay, can you see the PowerPoint slide?
Dave, I can see your PowerPoint. It does not look like it's in presentation mode. If you could make it bigger.
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. Apologize for the difficulty in getting everybody signed on, but we are recording, and hopefully it'll be available to you folks to watch again, and to your compatriots who are not able to join us tonight in the very near future. So, as Jennifer said, this Fresh Connection is the tool, for lack of a better term. It's the format or the environment for this competition. Some of you have been involved in previous competition last year, or may have come across the Fresh Connection in some other context. But what it is it's a simulated company, and it was developed and is used primarily as a training environment. So the Fresh Connection company, the company that developed Fresh Connection, is called InChange. They're in Europe, and affiliates all around the globe are running education programs using the Fresh Connection as the format or the basis for that. And what the Fresh Connection is, it's a company that exists only in software. It is designed to simulate the operation of a company. In this case, it's a company that bottles fruit juice, and located in Northern Europe, and with suppliers around the globe, and with customers of various kinds, and a defined product line, and so forth. And there's enough detail and scope built into the simulation that you can actually operate the company and generate a profit or a loss and satisfy customers, or fail to satisfy customers. And it's very complete and very detailed and very comprehensive. It's really it's a great tool. It'll give you an opportunity to get behind the wheel and drive a company without the risk of driving into the ground and costing people their jobs and money and so forth. So it's a very safe environment, but it does give you a very good view of how a company operates and how the supply chain operates. So we start off with the simulation. The company has lost money in the previous year or 6 months, and your assignment is to make it profitable again. Simply that. The way the company is set up, very simply, is there is supply, of course, and there is a warehouse for the components. There is production, where you turn those components into products, and then there's a finished product warehouse, and then you distribute those products to customers. Now, your roles are defined in these 4 categories: purchasing, operations, supply chain, and sales. Each of you will have certain things that you can control, and you are to work as a team to move this company forward, to make some strategic and tactical decisions, to enter those decisions into the simulator, and I'll show you how that works in just a few minutes here. And then we'll let the company run for 6 months and see the results. Then you can look at those results and advance your plans, make some changes, and we'll go through it again. And there'll be a total of 5 rounds involved. Excuse me. So here's the product. It's actually 3 flavors of fruit juice. There's orange juice with vitamin C enhancement, and there's an orange mango blend. Each of the 3 is available in 2 different package sizes: the 1-liter carton and the smaller plastic bottle or PET bottle. And the shelf life on all finished products is 20 weeks, and that can be a critical factor as well, as you'll see shortly. So we have 3 warehouses. There's a pallet warehouse and a tank yard warehouse for the components. Obviously, the orange juice, which comes in large quantity, comes in and gets pumped into the tank yard. All the other, the packaging materials, the vitamin C, the mango that comes in smaller quantities, those things come on pallets and are stored in a pallet warehouse. The production process is a 2-step process. There's mixing and then bottling, and there's equipment and manpower and so forth that you can control. and then the finished product is all on pallets, and that goes into its own warehouse, and then is distributed out to the customers, and that's under the control of the sales listed here as CRM, customer relationship management, and the suppliers are on the left-hand side labeled SRM for supplier relationship management. A few words about shelf life. As you already saw, all of the products have a 20-week shelf life. Some of that will be consumed internally as that product sits in finished goods inventory, and then the rest of it is available to your customers. Now, one of the things that you're going to negotiate with your customers is how much shelf life they expect when they get product shipped to them. So if you offer them longer shelf life remaining on the products, then they will be willing to pay more for those products. However, that reduces your free time in finished goods stock. So that puts a tighter requirement on your finished goods inventory. If you want more flexibility in manage that inventory, have it available for sale for a longer time, then you would promise the customers less shelf life remaining when they get the product, and they will want to pay less for that. So that's just a small sampling of how that interaction works, and you'll see that as we work through the brief demo here, the walkthrough. So you have 3 customers. There's a retailer called Food and Groceries, 500 stores, and they are a supply chain leader. They're a Wegmans or a Shaw's or a major retailer, first-line retailer. We have a second retailer called Land Market, and they're a discounter. They're an Aldi's or a Price Chopper or that kind of store. And they have 300 stores. And then finally, we have a chain of gas stations goes by the name of Dominic's. There are 50 stores, and they only distribute the smaller PET bottles. So their products that they buy from us and distribute for us are half. They have all 3 varieties of juice, but only in the smaller containers. Price setting. Now, this applies to both raw materials and to the finished products. And the way the price is set is there is a base price for all the components and for each of the finished goods. And then there is a contract index. And that contract index is determined by the conditions of purchase or sale. And those are negotiated by supply and distribution or sales. Okay. So on the supplier side, the purchasing person will negotiate various parameters with the suppliers, things like the receipt window, whether they have to deliver those components within a 4-hour window or 1-day window or any time during a week, a designated week. Obviously, if you hold them to a tighter delivery window, then you'll have to pay them more. You're reducing their flexibility. If you allow them to deliver anytime within a 5-day range, then you can beat them down on price a little bit. You can pay less because you're giving them a more favorable conditions on delivery. And you can negotiate a number of other factors, and I'll show you what some of those are as we go through the demo. Same thing happens on the finished goods side. There is a base price and then a contract index that is determined by the promises you make to those customers, shelf life being one of them. If you promise them a longer shelf life, then the contract index goes up and the price they pay, and consequently the revenue that you earn will go up. You can also negotiate things like quality and reliability and that kind of thing, and I'll show you what those are. So bottom line is we are trying to affect the bottom line. Okay? So we have costs, operational costs and improvement costs and fixed costs and variable costs and that kind of thing. And then we have investments. We can buy new machines, or we can do training, user training, and we can do some preventive maintenance, things like that. Those all cost, but they pay back in terms of reduced cost or improved efficiency, improved product quality, which can raise the price we get for the product, things like that. And then the revenue, which is a result of sales, which is influenced by a number of factors. and the negotiations with the customers. Okay? So your challenge is to generate as much profit as you can, and I'll show you the reports and things that illustrate that. Each round represents a half a year of business. So we'll start out with round one. You'll all be starting at the same place. The company lost money in the previous year. You will look at how the company is structured and all the decisions that are made in those 4 areas of the business, and then you can make changes to try to improve the profitability. And then after we shut the simulation down on Sunday morning, then I'll run the calculations, and that simulates 6 months of operations, and then Monday night or Tuesday night when we meet again, you'll see the result, the bottom line result, and then I'll walk through some of the team, not all of them. There's too many, and I don't want to single anybody out, give them any kind of unfair advantage. But I'll pick some samples that illustrate some good things and some bad things, and give you some insight into how you can do better in the next round and so forth as we go forward. And we'll do that for each of the rounds. So how we get started is you'll select your role. Some of you, most of you, hopefully will have already done that. As you logged in and looked around a little bit and created your profile, you had to select your role. When we kick this off after this webinar this evening, then you'll have until Sunday morning to explore the situation and confer with each other and decide how you're going to run the company and make the appropriate decisions and make those entries. And then Tuesday night we'll see how you did. And so we'll go through that same process next week with round 2, and then rounds 3, 4, and 5 in Albany on Friday, March 3rd. All right, so let me switch out of here and go to the First Connection itself. And there you are. When you first sign on, this is the main screen that you will see. It's kind of a block diagram. The green area represents purchasing. And if you are the purchasing person, this is what will come up as the default. And you'll see on the right-hand side some general measurements, which are preset. They can be changed. You don't want to bother with that right now, but maybe as we get further into the game, you might want to do that. You can pick different measurements you want to see on this main screen, but all the measurements are available to you anyway under the covers. This is just kind of a snapshot. Under the red is supply chain and some general measurements for supply chain. Yellow is operations, and then orange is theirs. Now you may have noticed or may not, the top one in each of these is ROI, which is how you're going to be judged in the contest. That's the bottom line. That's the overall measurement. And down at the bottom of the screen are some general measurements to show you how your team is doing relative to the other 27 teams in this competition. So your score is on the top, and yellow will be kind of middling. If you are behind the averages for that particular measurement, you'll be in red. If you're above, you'll be in green. And I'll tell you what your actual measurement is in each of these 4 categories. So it's just kind of a snapshot. Each of the team members will go into their individual work areas, as represented by this menu bar here: purchasing, operations, sales, and supply chain management. And that's where you'll make your decisions, make your entries, and do your job. In fact. So let's go look at them in turn. My internet connection seems to be particularly slow tonight. I apologize for that. Should be much quicker than that. All right, so here we are in purchasing. All of these work areas are set up pretty much the same way. On the left-hand side, there's a dashboard with some measurements, and down at the bottom there are several reports. And I'll show you some of these and talk you through them to give you a flavor for how this simulation software works. On the right-hand side is where you manage your resources, make your decisions. Since this is purchasing, what we see on the right-hand side are our suppliers. And we have suppliers in purchasing for packaging materials, for PET bottles, plastic bottles, for orange juice, for mango, and for vitamin C. Okay, so you have one supplier for each of those commodities and that's where purchasing works. Now, you'll see for each of these suppliers there are a number of different parameters here. Quality, lead time, whether certified or not, country of origin, transportation mode, the free capacity, which is information that you might find handy if you are negotiating with a new supplier, which you can do at certain levels of the game. Then, if you're going to give your business to a new supplier and that supplier is already at 95% capacity, you may have second thoughts about trusting them to deliver on their promises. If they are too close to capacity already. Actually, this one is at 18% available. This one has free capacity 3%. So I'd be worried about their performance, whether we have enough leverage with them to get their attention so that we don't get thrown up more tantalizing requirements from some other customer and so forth. So let's go down the payment terms. Trade unit, that's the size of the increments of shipment, whether it's a case, a pallet layer, a pallet, or full truckload, or full tank load, depending on the product. Delivery reliability, how much have they promised you in terms of how reliable they are in meeting their commitments. And that's something you can play with. You can negotiate at a high level, but it's going to cost you more. And then you have to watch and make sure that they actually deliver to that level, because they don't always. Okay, so that's kind of a risk that you have to manage. And here's the delivery window I mentioned before. It could be 4 hours, could be a day, could be a week, and so forth. So if you want to change the conditions, or if you want to negotiate with a replacement supplier, then hit the negotiate button. Hit yes, and that will bring up a little window with the things that you are allowed to negotiate at that level of simulation. Let me explain that to you briefly. Simulation is designed to give me flexibility in what you are allowed to do. All right, we're starting at what's called a level 3, which gives you a pretty good selection of things that you can work with, levers that you can control and to manage the business, but not all of them. There are additional things that you cannot do at this level that you will be allowed to do in round 2, round 3, round 4, so forth. Okay, so one of the things you cannot do in round 1 is select a new vendor, a new supplier. Okay, so you're stuck with the suppliers you have, but you can renegotiate the terms. For example, if you want to change the trade unit from pallet to full truckload. Now, a pallet is a small shipment, so you'll probably pay more for a small shipment. Right? So you can see the current contract index is 0.994. Okay, so I'm paying 99.4 cents on the dollar of the base price for this particular commodity because of these conditions that are negotiated. Now, if I change that to full truckload, I will expect that contract index to change because I'm asking for bigger shipments. And let's see if it changes. It's changed from 0.994 to 0.991. So I've just reduced my cost. Okay, it's a favor to the supplier to allow them to ship in larger quantities. Right? They can get economies of scale and so forth. So they're going to reward that with a lower price. As you've seen here, I can change any of these parameters. If I open this delivery window up to a week and hit calculate again, that lowers me to 0.985. Okay, so I can go back and forth and I can play with these to my heart's content. And when I'm happy with the arrangement, then I hit the deal button, and that locks it in. If I don't hit the deal button and just cancel, I didn't make any changes. Okay, so one thing you have to keep in mind is as you go through and make these decisions, make these entries, there will be a save or a deal or some kind of a button like that that locks that change in. And if you don't hit that button, the change never happened. Okay, so don't be caught short on that. Now, one thing I want to point out before I move on here is these little I in the circle. That's information. You want to know what the contract index is? Hit the I button. Contract X determines the extent of the premium or discount agreed to relative to the basic purchase price. An index less than 1 is a discount. An index greater than 1 is a premium. If you want to know more, hit the More button, and that brings up further description. Right? And this is, we've got a paragraph that describes that. So let's go back, close that, and let's move on, and I'll come back to the reports a little bit later on. Let's look at operations. Operations can, at this level of simulation, again, you get reports and measurements on the left, things you can do on the right. At this level of simulation, you can, per supplier, order raw materials inspection. Okay. You hit the little I button, it'll tell you to check immediately upon arrival whether the supply materials meet quality specifications, and to get more definition on that. Now, if you don't trust your supplier, or the supplier has poor quality or poor reliability, and you don't want those bad supplies to impact production schedules. If you get bad supplies in there, if they come in late, you can't produce your product according to schedule, then you could disappoint your customers, and it could pay big time for that. You could shut down your production or disrupt your schedule. So if you've got an unreliable supplier, you may want to order incoming inspection. Okay. If you do, then that will institute a little bit of a delay. When those materials are received in, then they have to be inspected. That takes manpower in the warehouse, right? And it's a little delay. There's some cost involved, right? So that's the trade-off. You may be better off to demand more from the supplier or fire a more reliable supplier. So those are the kind of trade-offs you have to work with. And all the information you need to make that decision is in the simulation. And I'll show you in just a few seconds here where you can find that information. But that's really what you're doing in these rounds, is you're looking at these situations, you're identifying an area for improvement or an area of problems, and then you're digging in to see what the choices are, and then do the trade-offs. Would we be better off? Would it cost us less and give us the same return if we bear down on the suppliers or find another supplier, or would we stick with these same unreliable suppliers and incoming inspect and get our quality that way? So that's the kind of thing that you'll be dealing with. Now at the bottom here, the number of locations in the incoming pallet warehouse. Right? It comes as 900. Look at your report and see if that was adequate or not. If it's not enough, you'll have a pretty high cost for temporary storage. Temporary storage is always available. They're not going to leave the goods out on the street, but temporary storage is about 5 times as more expensive as internal storage. Okay, so if you're spending a lot of money for temp, then you want to increase the size of the incoming warehouse enough to greatly reduce that temporary storage, but not so much, because that costs too. Right? It costs less, but it does cost whether you need it or not. If you've got it specified in here. And then the number of employees. The number of employees will be impacted by the number of receipts that you get, the volume shipments. We get everything in small quantities, and it's more work for the warehouse people. The incoming inspection puts some restrictions on them as well. And there's also in another area of the simulation, you could specify the intake time. So if you allow them 3 days or 4 days or 5 days to go through the intake process, then it uses less manpower per day because they've got more flexibility to assign the people as needed. If you don't give them much time and you overload them, then you'll call in temporary help, which again is about 5 times as expensive. So you'll do this manning based on looking at the performance and on also considering any changes you've made that might change the volume of goods coming through that warehouse that may impact the manpower required. Okay? So I think you're getting a feel for how these things work and what you're going to have to be doing. So staying in operations here, there's mixing. There's a mixing machine. Right? In this case, at this level of simulation, you have that one machine. There's not much you can do about it. In higher levels of simulation, you can change the machines. You can have a second machine. You can change the product mix on each machine and so forth, but not in round one. Bottling, same kind of deal. There's one machine. In higher levels of simulation, you can add another machine, or you can replace that hidden machine with a different one. And the characteristics of the machines, the setup time required, their speed, what they're good for in terms of flexibility or speed or so forth, you can all trade those off as you make those decisions. Now, whatever machines you're using, even at level 1 here, you can do preventive maintenance, never a little or a lot. Preventive maintenance costs, but it does prevent breakdowns. You can also do training for your workers so that if you do have a breakdown, they can get the machines up and running again more quickly. And again, you can go to I and then go to more, and it'll tell you what it costs and what the benefit is. Okay, if you spend money for breakdown training, then it costs X thousand euros, but it will get your machines back up and running in half the time, or 75% less time, or whatever it is. It's all built in there, and I'll show you where that information is. Or you can just find it through the I and then the more. And then in the manpower on the bottom here, the number of shifts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 shifts, and then that will increase or decrease your personnel costs, your manpower costs. SMAD, it's an old-fashioned abbreviation that we still use. Originally stood for single minute exchange of dies, but what it really is quick turnover, quick changeover action. So if you click that, again, there's a price, but it will reduce the changeover time from one product to the next. And then you can also increase speed. That's a click check mark. And again, you can go to the I and the more, and it'll tell you how much it costs and how much of an increase it gets you. We can also, in operations, control the outbound warehouse, number of pallet locations, right, and a number of personnel. Moving on to supply chain. Supply chain controls the safety stock for raw materials and the lot size for raw materials. And again, all the impact of those decisions is available to you in the Selling Info Center up here, or through the icons. Okay. Production. Frozen period. This is the period of time in weeks where you cannot change the master schedule. Okay, you put a schedule together based on promises you make to the customer and an internal planning calculation that takes place, and then that schedule is locked in. So if you have some unexpected demand or product spoilage or something like that, and you need to change that schedule to compensate for a shortage, you can't change it within that frozen period. So the longer the frozen period, the less flexibility you have. The shorter the frozen period, the more flexibility you have. But if you're changing production at the last minute, you're going to have other costs involved. You're going to have a lot more changeover costs. You're going to have schedule disruptions. You're going to have perhaps problems with raw material availability. If you're making changes inside the lead time it takes to get more raw materials that are now needed that weren't when you did the initial plan. Okay. So again, always trade-offs. On the product end, production interval. This is the amount of time in days between one run and the next for a given product. So if you're doing 1 liter orange juice and you put a 10-day production interval in here, then the system will not plan the next run any less than 10 days after the previous run. Okay, so this goes into the planning process, but also is a factor in flexibility, in the lot size of the product that's made at any given time, so the number of changeovers and so forth. And then safety stock for the finished products. And you all know what safety stock is. It's a compensation for changes in demand or disruptions of one sort or another. So you look at the pattern of demand and then determine how much safety stock you're going to need. And then as you go round to round, you can adjust that to what you're seeing in terms of your warehouse. We can look at that right now, actually. If you look at the product here under supply chain, you can see, okay, this up at the top, there's data, the demand per week, the service level actually achieved, the average amount of stock in weeks of demand, stock value, and so forth and so on. And down at the bottom, you can see the inventory position. You can see we ran out of orange 1 liter early on, about day 10 to day 16 or so. And then we ran out of vitamin C 1 liter a couple of times during the run here. We didn't ever run out of the orange juice in the PET bottles. We did have momentary shortages in mango in the PET bottles. We ran out of the vitamin C in PET right at the end of the 6 months, and we weren't able to replenish it until before the 6 months ended. So you can look at stock development, and you can make decisions about lot sizes and production intervals and safety stock and so forth. You can see the same kind of thing for components. All the data up at the top, and then the graphs at the bottom to show you the components. Okay, it looks like we have plenty of safety stock. We never went below about 1.5 weeks or so on the packing materials. So you may have more safety stock in there than you really have to have. We did run out of orange juice at one point, which could explain the finished goods shortage that occurred about that same time or thereafter. And here's the vitamin C. We ran out of vitamin C late in the process. Therefore, when we ran out of that vitamin C PET product, we couldn't replenish because we didn't have the vitamin C to do it. So you can kind of see some of the interactions and the things that will lead to your success or failure is your ability to trace these relationships and to see how they influence each other and to work together to develop a plan and a strategy that serves your market and your determined way of doing business. Okay, I want to lead you to this finance report. This is available to all of you. This is the bottom line here. It's right at the top. Where you are today is at 3.96% negative. That's a loss. Okay, and we have our revenue here, and then gross margin, which is revenue minus cost of goods sold. We have all our miscellaneous costs, and then our profit down here at the bottom. Okay. Our profit's minus 157,000. Okay, and then I can look at all the details. I can look at the revenue by customer, food and groceries, land market, Dominic's, and I can look at bonus and penalties. Bonus and penalties are a reflection of whether you delivered or not, over-delivered or under-delivered relative to the promises you made to those customers. If you promised them a certain service level, 95% service level, in other words, you would meet their orders expectations 95% of the time, and you delivered 92%, then you will see a penalty here that reflects your failure to meet that expectation. So if you have a penalty there's two things you can do in the next round. You can either lower their expectations, in other words, go out there and change that 95% service level to 92%, or, and that would reduce the penalty, but it would also reduce your revenue because you're getting less for the product. Or you can fix your operations, finished goods inventory and shelf life and all that, so you can actually deliver 95%. And that will eliminate the penalty without reducing the revenue. But it will probably cost you more. Higher quality components, or more work in production, or more changeovers. You get more flexibility in that finished goods inventory production and those kind of things. So, again, it's all trade-offs, and all the information you need is in here. There's a little plus here at each line. I'll let you break out the details. And this report shows you the current runs in the left-hand column here, and then the previous result would be in the next column. Now, since you're starting from 0 here, there's no difference. But after round 1, next Tuesday night, you'll see round 1 will be in the left position, round 0 will be in the right position, and then over here in the right-hand column will be the difference. You can very quickly scan down there and say, oh, we had a 97,000 euro increase in the cost of raw materials, or we had a 50,000 euro increase in the cost of labor in production. And you can quickly zero in on where your changes improved or worsened your situation in each of these areas. Okay. Then you can go out to your individual areas, and you can look at the individual reports down here in the lower left. Here's a report by supplier. It shows you, for each supplier, what the actual delivery reliability was here in this first column, and the reject rate, which reflects on their quality, the number of deliveries, the number of order lines, the purchase value, the transportation costs. You can use information from this report to figure out what to change in your dealings with that supplier. If you look at, you can also look at it by, do that, go back out to purchasing. We looked at it by supplier. You can also look at it by component. It's pretty much the same thing if you only have one supplier per component, which is all you have at this level of the simulation. In a higher level of the simulation, you can have multiple. You can have a primary supplier and a secondary supplier. So then you want to look at it by supplier and by component. It's different. Let's look in sales. One thing in particular I want to show you here, and then we'll wrap this up. When you look at product sales, again, we have the by product. We have the details up here, the demand per week, the value of the demand, the unit price, the gross margin, service level actually delivered, so forth. We can compare that to what we promised. Now at the bottom, you can see patterns down here. This is not stock. This is demand. Okay. If you look at demand, you get some idea about how much it fluctuates, and this is all done with a randomizer that simulate reality. Because in reality, demand does fluctuate day to day, week to week. Right? We're looking at weeks here. So looking at the demand pattern should give you a good idea of what you should be doing with safety stock, and give you an idea of how you should manage that finished goods inventory to be able to satisfy the demand as it fluctuates. Okay. And I want to take you one other place up here, and I want to show you sales category management. Now, this is, I don't believe it's open to you on round 1, but you'll see it later on. You can decide to delete a product completely, or you can remove a product from a particular customer. So if you're having trouble keeping, vitamin C, you ran out of vitamin C, it caused you some big penalties in several of your customers and products, you could just decide not to do vitamin C products at all anymore. Okay, so you just uncheck the C power in PAT, click, 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 across all 3 customers, and uncheck C power in liters, click, click, across the 2 customers that get it now. You're no longer doing C. Right? It will not be planned, not be stored in inventory. It'll totally out of the picture. However, you have reduced your product line, so you need to do something to improve the sales, increase the sales in some of your other product lines to keep your revenue up. Or reduce costs elsewhere because you're not going to be using those production facilities or the storage spots and like that to reflect your reduced costs in not producing that product. Again, it all flows from end to end through the supply chain. So you have to consider all those ramifications when you make those kind of decisions. In a higher level of the simulation, you can do things with promotions and forecasts and that kind of thing. And I'll introduce you to those as we get into the rounds that introduce those opportunities to you. So that's about it. When you come in here, all the background information that I keep referencing is in here on the Info Center. So when you hit an I and then hit a more, it's actually taking you to Info Center. Here you can just go in directly and look at all the parameters and how the game is structured and all the KPIs and the roles and topics and all that. They're all in here. So all that information is available to you. Under information, this is something that you might want to have in your back pocket. Bill of material with the right quantity pairs. It tells you about the packaging sizes. You know how many the shelf life and everything is products is 20 weeks, but the raw materials have less or have different shelf lives. Generally, you don't have to worry about those because we're only going 2.5 years with the simulation, and you're not going to have any of the materials more than 52 weeks, which is their shelf life. Their shelf life on the packaging materials and the PET is unlimited. Those don't go bad. But here, the pallet layer content, the pallet content, and the base price, you can use this information as you're doing your trade-offs. If you want to determine what the impact on the warehouse location requirement is, if you change the amount of inventory for a particular commodity. PET bottles take up a lot of space, for example. So if you're going to increase the safety stock or the lot size for PET stock, for PET, you have to take a look at how much more inventory warehouse space is going to be take up. Here's how you figure that out. There are 1,080 per pallet. Okay, so you take whatever the increased inventory is going to be, divided by 1,080. That tells you how many additional pallet locations you're going to need because of that change in how you're provisioning and stocking that raw material. So again, all the data is here. You just have to kind of think through and then do it. Now, the last thing I want to point out to you is up here in this little blue in the upper left. It says pay attention. Right? You've got mail. Right? The system will actually give you mail. And that mail will appear in your inbox up here in the top menu tape. Right? Click inbox. Here's your mail. Okay? There will be some mail that goes to all 14 members. There will be some mail that goes specifically to purchasing or specifically to operations or supply chain and so forth. Right? Read your mail. Right? So as you go into the simulation, what I suggest to you is first go to the financial report and kind of get a look at what your performance is in each of these areas. Look at your supplies, your materials costs, your operation costs, your sales and your bonuses and penalties and so forth. And by the way, bonuses can be just as bad as penalties. They tend to be smaller in most cases, but you can over-deliver. If you promise 95% reliability and you deliver 98%, you're not getting paid for that extra performance. So you'll get a bonus, but you'd be much better off to reduce the performance or increase the promises to have them match better. You'll get a much better return on that. So your goal should be, one of your primary goals should be to keep that bonus penalty as close to zero as possible. You don't want it more than a few thousand one way or the other because that's a direct reflection of how well you are performing relative to the promises you make to your customers. And that's really the bottom line. That's the measure of the goodness of your business, the value of your business. All right, so be sure and use those I-links in the info center to get the information, to dig in and understand the decisions you're making. Don't just go blindly in and shoot from the hip. You're not going to win that way. You win by being thorough, being analytical, and by working together. So study the financial report, make your decisions, make your entries. Don't forget to hit save or deal or whatever it is in that particular screen to make sure that those changes get locked in. And oh, by the way, you can make those entries over and over again. Okay? Choose a vendor, renegotiate with them, do deal, come back tomorrow and decide, nah, I really don't want to do it that way. Renegotiate, get deal again, and it overwrites what was there before. The only thing that really counts, really takes effect, is what's in place when I hit that calculate button on Sunday morning. So make your decisions, make your entries. I'll close the simulation at 9 a.m. on Sunday. We'll leave it close. You won't be able to see your results until we get together again on Tuesday evening, and then I'll open it up. You'll all be able to see your results, and I'll walk you through some of them and give you some advice, tell you about the new features that are available to you in round 2, and we'll kick it off, and you'll have approximately a week to make your round 2 decisions. Then round 3, 4, and 5, you'll have 45 minutes to make your decisions. So use these first 2 rounds to get familiar with the simulation, with where the information is, how it all works together. Use it as a learning opportunity. Round 1 will not count in your final score. Round 2 will count at, I believe it's 20%, round 3 and 4 at 25%, round 5 at 30%, and those will be added together and make up 50% of your final score, the other 50% being the presentation. Okay, but one question that comes up all the time is, if I totally blow it in round 1, have I sunk my chances? The answer is absolutely not. These are not cumulative. Each round is quite independent. It's 6 months of operations under the conditions that you specify when you make your entries for that round. Okay, so round 1 is calculated, and it turns out you're at minus 35%. It could happen. It does happen. Don't be scared. Don't give up. It doesn't count. Okay. What you change in round 2, and in fact, that may be an advantage because you get to see a very clear illustration of what could go wrong and what you did wrong. So learn from that. Figure out what you did wrong, fix it, and then round 2, if you greatly improved it, there's no reason why you can't be at plus 10% or plus 15%. You are not penalized for having started at minus 30. The only thing that carries over from one round to the next is the inventory balance, any orders that are in progress or about to ship or about to be completed in production. Your current situation carries forward, but none of the results carry. Okay, so if you totally blow it in round 1, don't despair. If you blow it out of the water in round 1 and turn it around and get a positive result, don't sit back on your laurels. Again, learn from that as much as you can, and just try to make it better. Okay, so those count. Those scores do not count. Round 2, 3, 4, and 5 do count, but they're 20%, 25, 25, and 30. So you're given a bit of a reprieve on the early rounds. So as you learn, as you get better, those later scores will come for more. So that's good. Also, as you make these decisions, you may want to make notes. Try to remember why you made the decisions and made the way you did, because that's what you're going to put into your presentation. Okay? The judges at the presentation don't want to hear about reducing the penalty from minus 154,000 to plus 3,000. Okay, fine, but that really doesn't mean anything to an accountant or a business person that's not familiar with your company. What they want to hear is, we determined that we weren't delivering according to what we had promised this particular customer under these conditions. So what we did was changed the promise to the customer, or we changed our production schedule so we had smaller batches and we had fresher product, or whatever it is that was behind that decision. And the result of that was we improved here, or we overshot, or we didn't do enough. Okay, so it's always in business terms, and that presentation should reflect what you learned and the basis of your decisions. Okay, so here's the game sign-on. It's game.freshconnection.eu/b6. Use the ID and password that we provided, or the password that you set up when you set up your profile. Go in and make your decisions. Dig around, have fun, learn it. Use these first 2 rounds to learn about the company as much as you can, and be ready for the later rounds when you only have 45 minutes to correct your errors and refine your good decisions. All right, at this point, Jennifer, do you have anything further?
Thank you, Dave.
Take it back.
Yes. And I have one final screen for this evening. Just again, a reminder for the key dates that are coming up. Round 1 will close this Sunday at 9 a.m. And as Dave said, we'll be back together for our webinar next Tuesday night. That one will be much more interesting after you've had the week to play with the tool, use some of the functionality, and then come prepared for webinar 2, perhaps with some more questions on what you've experienced during the week.
And I'll give you some more things that you can control in round 2.
That's right.
So that's some more fun.
I'm looking at the chat box right now to see if anyone has any pressing questions at the moment. Please also note that the Gmail account will be monitored all during the week. So if you do have questions during the week as they come up, please do send them there, and Dave and myself will respond to those.
If it's a question about the operation of the company, I probably won't answer because that would be an advantage to your team. If it's an interesting question or one that comes up several times, I'll put it into the discussion we have next Tuesday night so that everybody can benefit from it. If it's a technical thing about sign-on difficulty or something like that, then we'll answer those as quickly as we can.
Correct. Okay, I see one question from a person, but it's more about an email sign-on information, so I will take care of that with Shane Sullivan.
Right. So,
otherwise,
said, have fun.
Yep.
Enjoy.
Go ahead, have fun.
Fun.
And we will get this recording out to everyone. I apologize again for the difficulties earlier with the logins. All right, thanks again for your time, and have a good week, and we'll talk together next Tuesday night. Thank you.